me to know about you after that conversation?
Is this like a casual conversation, or like do I know like what your occupation is?
No, we're just talking. Two guys talking.
I like to think about things on a deeper level. I like to conceptualize. I'm very interested in talking about I'm very open-minded. I like to think about more things other than what's just present at the moment. I'm not really sure what you're asking for.
I think you answered what I was asking for, and I appreciate your response, okay? When you first got the notice that you were going to be doing jury, or called for jury service, what was your first reaction to that notice?
Like, why me? I didn't think it was, I didn't think I'd be somebody that could be selected for this case. It was never a thought in my mind until I saw it on the paper and filled out the questionnaire.
So you kind of had a why me moment.
Yeah.
Did you ponder that question, and what did you come up with?
There's a lot of philosophical things I could say, but I'm just going to say it was just a random selection. The machine or whatever picked my number or picked my license, however it goes, and that's the reason why I'm here right now. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I'm also curious as to the philosophical response.
I don't know. Maybe I was just chosen to be a part of this trial. Just, how do I explain it? Just the way my life has been going, just the experiences I had, kind of just doesn't feel like a coincidence that I'm here, a part of this trial.
So is it that I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or trivialize anything, but you sort of feel like a purpose or a higher calling or some reason that you were chosen to be, even though it's a random process to select people?
I wouldn't say it's like my purpose to be here. I just think maybe for whatever reason it is, I'm here right now. Maybe there's something I need to learn from the series of events, or something I gotta see for myself to know. I don't know. That's what I was trying to say with the philosophical. Like, it's case by case. I don't have a direct answer to everything. It's just, I guess it's just how I'm feeling at that time, and like what answers I can give to it when
Okay. I appreciate that. So I guess you obviously know the case. You know why you're here. And you formed some opinions about the case, personal opinions, right?
Yeah.
And because I believe in your response answering why you didn't want to be a juror was because of your opinions. Your personal opinions conflict with participating as a jury.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
I feel like this whole process is just gonna what's the word I'm thinking of? It's gonna snowball. It's gonna like get bigger and bigger as the days go by, and I don't know if I want to deal with all what comes with that. The media attention, the people outside the courthouse, of the guards and stuff is just, it's a lot for me to take in.
Sir, I understand that it's a very intimidating process.
Yeah.
That's probably even more intimidating because of the virtue of this case, and it's even more intimidating by virtue of the maelstrom of events surrounding it, right? But have you formed personal opinions about what happened back in May?
Yeah.
And your response to why you don't want to be a juror in this case is because you feel conflicted based on those personal opinions. Is that fair?
Yeah. I kind of feel like I feel like I'd be more willing to participate. I mean, I'm participating right now, but I feel like I wouldn't be so conflicted to participate if it was a different case.
So I guess I'm just going to ask you outright, what are your personal opinions about this case?
I think this whole thing is just very divisive. Me being a part of this case kind of feels like to me that I'm adding to the divisiveness, not necessarily saying that that it's done on purpose. It's just I just think forward in the future about how like what my life is gonna be like after the case, and like if people are gonna see videos or know that I was there. There's a lot of people I know, and I just don't want them to know that I was a juror on the case. I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it with other people like that.
So the bottom line.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess the bottom line is that we're trying to determine if you could be a fair and an impartial juror in this case. Would your opinions prevent you from being a fair and an impartial juror?
I'm not sure, because I don't know. Do you just want me to tell you some things I think and we go from there? Because
sure.
Mark, what would you like to know first?
Why don't you tell me some things that you think, and we'll go from there.
From what I know, the MPD has a history of corruption and just I just hear that there's a lot of bad cops in the MPD. I just don't trust. I don't really trust law enforcement like that. I just feel a little bit intimidated when they come around.
So can I just interrupt you, because we're going to kind of go back and forth, right?
Yeah.
As I understand, you said that the Minneapolis Police Department, in your opinion, has a history of corruption.
Yeah.
And do you have personal experience with that, or do you have friends who've had experience with that, or is that predicated on what people talk about?
Part of it is just from what I heard, and past things that happened in Minneapolis, but also because my dad was racially profiled in a traffic stop, and he doesn't break the law.
Okay. So you have a family member who has had an experience, a negative experience with the Minneapolis Police Department.
Yeah.
Okay. So just looking at your role here as a juror would be to be fair and impartial, to listen to evidence, all of the evidence as it's presented, and weigh the question of guilty or not guilty based on what you see in court. Do you think that you could set aside your personal experiences and your belief of corruption or history of corruption about the Minneapolis Police Department aside as you weigh this question?
I'm conflicted. I can be impartial, but I could be fair and impartial, but I just don't know if I could stay like that, present with all the evidence that I'm going to be seeing and all that. I don't know. I don't know what the evidence is.
It's time for our afternoon break. We normally take a 20-minute break at this time. So I'm going to ask that you go with the deputy to go back to the other courtroom, and we'll all take a break, and we're going to come back at, let's say, 3:25. And you can talk in the meantime, and counsel wants to come into chambers after a couple minutes. All right, thank you. We're in recess.
I don't believe this, and I just, oh man. I just, the one thing I want is accountability. Growing up, that's what I was taught. Be accountable for your actions. If you do the crime, you do the time. So why is it different for these guys? It shouldn't be different. And it will not be different, because we will get justice for my brother.
The world witnessed the live execution of George. Everybody watched him scream for his mom. He pleaded for help, and nobody cared. They kept their knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I ask that everybody stand with us in solidarity as we tirelessly go through everything that we have to go through with the court. Because they're going to prolong this as long as they can, because they have no ability at all to say that that video was right. That was wrong. They killed him. This is worldwide. The nation is standing behind us. We need justice, and we demand that.
They saying he died from a drug overdose. They saying that he was non-compliant. Floyd, oh, that's my brother, you guys. Let me tell you, he's an uncle. He's a father. He's a friend. Pillar of his community in Houston, Texas. Everybody loved George where he's from, and Minnesota, the people of Minnesota loved him too. The people that got to know him. And one thing about George, he will want us to get his justice for him. And them officers saying that drug overdose killed him, that did not kill him. That officer, the only one that was getting high, my brother begging for his life. That's the only one I saw getting high. As my brother begged for his life for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, begging this man, take your foot off my neck, give me some water, let me breathe. And they say when someone's dying, you know, they have visions, something close that they love so dearly. And he called out for mama. And you know, one thing, when we all get in trouble, male or female, we gonna call our mama, because mama gonna make us feel so much better. take the situation away. So my brother screamed and called out for mom. That hurt me so dealing that traumatic hunting video. Have to watch that video, hearing them see that, and my daughter called me. My daughter is 9 years old. Called me on the phone, FaceTime me. I tried to hide this from her, but it found her. She called me crying and said, "Dad, I'm so sorry for your brother's loss." Hurts deeply. And you know, I didn't even know what to say to her. I just did what her dad would do, what my mom would have did for me. That's what my brother called out for. Just comfort her, try to make her feel better, change the subject. But she just cried. I'm just looking at her laughing like, oh, look at my baby. She's so beautiful. So strong in this situation. She's trying to comfort me in our situation. So, again, Floyd, I know she's going to miss Floyd dearly. He was a great man, brother, uncle, father, friend, pillar of his community. That's the George Floyd I know. And I wish you guys would have got to know him as that person as well, not the person they're trying to paint him to be. Do not let them paint their picture and their narrative on Floyd, because Floyd narrated his death, if y'all listen to that video. So thank you guys for coming out, for the support. Love y'all, Minneapolis. Thank y'all.
Can't be on the wrong side of history. We making history right now. I want this in my school textbooks when I go back to school, because this is real.
We're done with this shit, okay? It's not fun and games anymore. We're fucking done with this shit.
$1 million bond? Bro, are you serious? That shit is crazy. They need to lock that dude up for life. They keep saying it was a drug overdose. A drug overdose? Are you serious? No, boy. That dude had his knee on his neck.
Black Lives Matter, justice for George Floyd. Keep Derek Chauvin in prison where he belongs.
I just hope he gets what he deserves, just like any other human. It sucks that the cops, they get to demonstrate being outside their power, and they don't ever get the consequences that they deserve for it.
In an ideal world, we're able to abolish the police, but until then, we need a justice system that holds killer cops accountable. And, I think the intersection of policing, race, capitalism sits a very deadly paradigm that we live in right now. So it's just good to see people out in the streets.
I'm a black girl in America. It's not a choice not to be active. I gotta be out here. I got black brothers, I got black sisters. My dad was black, my mom is black. It's not really a choice. This is mandatory. This is like a job. Because when I see my people out here just dropping, I can't sit back at home, just be chill about this. My soul won't allow me to do it.
George Floyd!
Say his name!
George Floyd!
Say it loud!
George Floyd!
Say it proud!
We're seeing the same story over and over for the past 400 years, and we're tired of it.
I want to be a teenager. I don't want to be out here protesting for basic human decency. What the hell does that? How the fuck is my skin a threat?
It's not, sis. And we have to consistently remind our people that it's not. This kind of stuff, if we weren't so mentally strong, this breaks people. As kids, that's mentally draining.
Okay.
There's so many fights that we have to fight just as children.
This is shit that you see at war. Ain't nobody supposed to see this shit. Tear gas is illegal. They tear gassing us. Whole time we was getting tear gas this whole entire summer. They don't even use that shit in war.
They were demanding payment.
Right.
And we believe the only way to eliminate the wealth gap is through reparations.
The wealth gap in this country is 90%. Whites have 90% of the wealth, blacks have 2.9% of the wealth. So the only real way to close the wealth gap is by paying reparations. The slave owners were given reparations when they released their slaves. So we feel it's important that the American descendants of slavery who built this country be compensated for slavery.
Reparations, not only, my great-grandma was a slave. Her mother and father were slaves. Maddie Mae in Memphis, Tennessee. They have hung my uncles. They locked my father up while he went to Vietnam and had to go on the front lines in the jungle. When he came back from Chicago, when they treated him messed up, and then he was in the hood, he got shot up over south where George got killed. We have to talk about the historical pieces.
Our proposal would be like if your family was here, if you're black and you've been here since 1965, So like if your family went through sharecropping, Jim Crow, the lynching period, redlining and redistricting, those type of things would be the determinant. It also is going to deal with police brutality, fixing our criminal and justice system, addressing medical issues, addressing the business component. So the St. Paul Recovery Act will put taxes on menthol, cigarette. It would start with like all tobacco products. Then there would be a fund, and that money would be put into the reparations, the St. Paul Recovery Act, and distributed to the American descendants of slavery.
The best way to address police brutality is through reparations. The best way to help address the housing gap in America. 50% of the people who are homeless in America are descendants of slavery. The health gap in America. African Americans were experimented on during slavery, and we still see this economic injustice today. We feel the best way to address universal health care is wonderful, a beautiful concept, but it does not address the historical injustices in America's health care system. Universal health care is a great concept, and I believe in it, but it will not address the historical trauma that Black women went through by being experimented on during slavery, or the sterilization projects that took place, or the Tuskegee experiments that took place. Universal health care won't address that, but reparations will.
St. Paul has some of the worst disparities in the country when it's dealing with education, when it's dealing with housing, when it's dealing with medical, when it's dealing with unemployment. St. Paul itself or Ramsey County did an anti-racism study, which said that their policies and procedures pathologize the Black family, and it's not enough just to give job training. There needs to be reparations and compensation for what happened to Rondo. It was similar to what happened in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood.
The murder of George Floyd, like we were saying, his family had 500 acres taken from him, taken from his great-grandfather. A lot of wealth in America is built off generational wealth. So when housing and property or businesses are passed down from one generation to another, that creates generational wealth. White America or slavery or institutional racism stole that from Black lives who are descendants of slavery.
I came all the way up from Atlanta to tell you this mission. It's embarrassing. All y'all embarrassed in the whole nation. Why? You should have went. You should have went and locked your boy up. You should have locked him up. You should have locked him up. Why you didn't lock him up? Why you didn't lock him up? If you fire him, you know he should be in jail. You know that. You know that. Y'all know you don't train nobody like that, man. And I ain't out here stunting, so my message done.
You know, it's just a lot of pain, man. You know, I do civil rights, you know what I mean? I'm the Georgia chairman for National Association of Equal Justice America. I'm working a case right now for Ahmaud Arbery. In a couple hours, I got to be on the phone with the FBI. You know what I mean? It hurt. We don't even got enough people trained to, Black people dying every day. We don't even got enough civil rights leaders to respond to all this stuff all over. I'm still with this, I'm in Georgia, we in Brunswick, I gotta catch a flight, same clothes, man, I ain't even shower. I gotta catch a flight, same clothes, just to come up here and tell them what they know. They went through training, they don't know you don't put nobody's knee on nobody like that, but they think people ain't gonna call them out. How you gonna fire somebody and not arrest him. It's just pain, man. This original sin is racism. Like, yo, I appreciate everybody. Like, when we start calling each other out, when we stop this blue shield stuff, when we stop that and we call it out, our nation gonna be better. Like, look at this, man. All this is embarrassing. This is messing up the economy. But when you back people on the wall, they try to make a point. They trying to say, yo, we don't like dying. Because at the end of the day, Floyd could have been me. You know what I mean? It could have been you. It could have been you. It could have been you. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the fact that this Black Lives Matter, yeah, we got to respect that 100%. But the police is just police state rogue. They killing people of all colors. You know what I mean? We still got it, because slavery and human trafficking is real. I'm still going to rock with Black Lives Matter all day long. But these dudes is straight police state. They will kill a dude regardless of their color. And they get away with it. The police accountability numbers is low. You know what I mean? So that's just me. You know what I mean? I did the lobbying with Oscar Grant's parents. We passed the AB 392 in California. It's one of the strictest use of force laws in the nation. You know what I mean? So we're going to be trying to probably do something up here, increase the law and the training on the state level.
Can you just expound upon that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I gotta give all blessings to Uncle Bobby, you know, Aunt BX, California Families United for Justice, you know what I mean, and Families United for Justice, you know what I mean, they doing great things, you know what I mean. If whoever listening, if you got an issue with police accountability, you know what I mean, you got to look up Uncle Bobby. He the greatest in the nation at it, right? So when we come in, young dudes, we coming in and we mad because it was a little lost. The policy had to be watered down. He been in that thing since his nephew died, and he teach us, you know what I mean? So our only thing, the law is the law, you know, it's passed what is passed. We didn't get everything we wanted on it. We got some stuff, you know what I mean? And they basically say it makes the use of force policy in the United States of America equal with international law. But that's only in California. Now we try and take that to the federal level and kick it out. But people ain't even doing work in the federal level. So now you got to spread the knowledge, and this basically you take AB 392, copy and paste it, clone it, edit it a little bit, and you get some lobbyists who know what lobbying is, and they push it out here in where we at, Minnesota? Yeah. I don't even know where I'm at. I'm just boom. Okay.
Has it worked in California?
It's too early to say.
Okay, yep.
That was less than too early, 2 years ago. So you got to get the data to say. You know what I mean? Too early to say. But look, all this stuff is patterns. When I got to come down here because I can't even believe the fucking news no more. So I'm like, I ain't even, everybody, oh, you going, don't tell me nothing, because I got to go find real people who know this dude. Oh, yeah, people telling me real stories. Yeah, oh, yeah, he let me in the club, this and that. I got to get it first here. Then I go, I ain't even seen the video. I just came to find out what real people think about it, what the real story is, you know what I mean? And the thing is, soon as they tell me this, soon as they tell me that the same cop that murdered him killed somebody else, we in Oakland looking at data like that. So when I'm telling state legislators that this is stupid that you don't got a law yet where when you fatally shoot somebody, yo, I get it that it's your livelihood at stake, but we got too many good ideas of how to give somebody another job, but they don't. PTSD is real. If you kill one dude, you know what I mean, the data show you likely to kill somebody. So it's just sad that we come here, we already knew this. We knew this in Oakland, that most of the killings come from people that kill twice, right? If you kill once, you're gonna kill again as a police officer. So it's sad because we gotta take this energy and then we gotta eventually put policy in place where it's like, oh, you killed one person, here you go do security without a gun. You know what I mean? I'm a two-way fan, so let me clarify. I'm not saying that you can't have your personal hammer on you, you know what I mean? But you can't take that sort of employment no more because you already showed yourself unfaithful. Last thing, man, I go all around the nation. You go to London, the way people police here in America is stupid. I talk to people, London police officers, they say, you know what? We train to tell people what not to do. We literally look at police film to see what not to do. You feel like I'm in London and I'm talking to the dude, being my girl, I'm talking to the dude I'm about to go in my pocket. I said, look.
Mr. Swisher, ask you some questions on behalf of the state to start with.
Okay.
If you would.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Juror number 17. Are you nervous today?
Yes.
Right. You've never been through a process like this before. Is it what you expected it would be?
Yeah, it's very drawn out. Not trying to say like it's just the course of the trial.
Yeah. Have you watched court shows on TV or know much about jury selection?
I've seen some court shows, but I don't know that much about jury selection.
Okay. Well, you would be somewhat relieved to know if you were selected as a juror on this case, this would be the last day you'd have to do any talking in front of people in a courtroom, because your role would be as a passive listener. And so in a lot of ways, today would be, probably the worst part in terms of being personally nervous. And you're already, about halfway through it.
Oh, yeah.
Is it something that you were anticipating? Were you thinking about being nervous before you got to court today?
I've been pretty anxious about it since I got the letter in the mail, just thinking about it today.
That's understandable. This is a big deal, and we all know that. And what we're asking you to do, today here is, to talk about your opinions, talk about possible biases you might have, and it's not a comfortable situation. We recognize that. The judge recognizes that, counsel recognizes that, and all we need, at this point is just for you to be able to look at us and just tell us what's on your mind, any opinions that you might have, and really think through, whether this is something that you can do, and not so much that you're nervous about doing it or nervous about having to answer the questions. All we can do is ask you to tell us the truth, okay? And so I need to just explore a few issues with you, and I need to hear it in your own words, because it's really tough for me, if I just say something and you say yes or no, to know what's really on your mind. And so at one point, when asked about some opinions that you may have formed before coming here to court, you were talking a lot about what your concerns might be after the fact.
Yeah.
Were your concerns, or were the opinions that you formed limited to general concerns that you would have after your jury service is over, or do you have some opinions that you can talk to us about, regarding the case itself?
You were asking if I had any opinions that might interfere with or might give me a bias towards the case itself?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I was saying before, I don't trust law enforcement. They're intimidating. I think it just they can get away with many things, and the case itself is just very. This whole thing is just very divisive, and I'm not a divisive person. I just feel like I just rather not be a part of something that's so two-sided. I don't like choosing sides like that. I like to be in my own lane. Like,
so I'd like to follow up with you a little bit about the mistrust you have of law enforcement, right? And see if I can give you an example of where such mistrust could exist, but you could still be a fair juror. So you know, growing up, you had a variety of teachers, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
And is it true that some of those teachers were good and some of the teachers were not so good?
Yeah.
Right? And so you would be able to distinguish that and judge each individual teacher on their own merits. It's not that all teachers are bad or all teachers are good. You have to go on an individual basis.
Right.
And so then I would ask you this question about law enforcement. Do you accept that perhaps there's some people in law enforcement who are not good law enforcement officers, but that there are people in law enforcement that are good law enforcement officers? And just like with a teacher, you would have to judge each individual on their merit, not based on what they do, right, but based on what you learn about them, what evidence you see. Would you be able to do that?
I don't know. I just kind of feel like the police department has their own interests in mind. Like I feel like they're trying to do whatever to protect themselves and like come out unscathed, if that makes sense. Like not be because I feel like they're trying to do the best they can not to get their police system or police department defunded. That's what I think it is. That they don't want to lose the presence they have and the ability they can to enforce the law. So I just feel like nobody wants to lose the job that they have, right? They don't want to see the thing they've been a part of for so long, come down because of something, whatever it may be.
And so when the judge gave you some preliminary instructions, he told you that one of the things when evaluating testimony you might consider someone's interest in the outcome of the case, right? What a witness might have to lose or gain by testifying one way or the other. Did you hear him say that?
But I didn't hear him say that. I'm pretty sure he did. I didn't hear him.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you finish?
No, I didn't hear him say that, but okay. I think he did.
Okay. Well, does that concept make sense to you, that when you're evaluating the testimony of a witness, you may consider whether or not that witness has some kind of interest in the outcome of the case?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And would you agree that that could be any witness, not only a police officer, but any witness who testified? You could validly consider whether or not that person had an interest in the outcome of the case.
Yeah.
And so when you say that you are concerned that the police are going to be looking out for their own interest, and I believe you said not wanting to be defunded, right, do you acknowledge that that would be the same as evaluating any witness's interest in the outcome of a particular case?
No, because the police department's part of the government. It's the police. It's in the name. They keep crime down so businesses and public areas can stay functioning, and also to protect the individuals that live in the neighborhoods they patrol in.
So some of the witnesses who would be called to testify would be called to testify by the state of Minnesota in this case, would be law enforcement officers. Do you believe that you would be able to evaluate the testimony of law enforcement officers called on behalf of the state in this case? in the same way that you would evaluate another witness, say a bystander?
You said there's police officers on the prosecution side?
Yes, the prosecution and the government here, and I represent the government, has the burden of proof. And so we would be calling witnesses who would be police officers. Would you be able to evaluate the testimony of those police officers in the same way that you evaluate other witnesses we may call?
Yeah.
And so you would be able to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, just to follow up, I believe when counsel was asking you questions about being impartial, and if I understood your answer, you said, I can be impartial, I can be fair and impartial, but you further indicated you don't know what the evidence is now. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, at least before seeing any evidence in this case, are you saying that you can be fair and impartial to both sides, both the prosecution and the defense?
I have my opinions, but they're not solid. I'm willing to see whatever side has to say.
Okay. So you understand then that, there are two sides to every story, right? And if you were called and seated as a juror in this case, your job would be to simply evaluate the evidence that comes into court, listening to the witness testimony, looking at any documents or things that we would introduce, and deciding the case solely based on that evidence, what you see, what you hear, what we show you, and then the judge's instructions on the law. And that's it. And you'd have to leave any opinions that you may have formed beforehand out the door, but just call the case and judge the case on its merits here.
You're asking if I could do that, yes or no?
Yeah, could you do that?
Yeah, I can do it.
And do you believe that you're the type of person who can be fair to everybody? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And you feel that you can give everyone at least a fair listen and then make your best judgment based on what you see and what you hear and what the judge tells you?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
So just wanted to follow up with a few additional questions. There's a little bit of an unusual procedure here. Mr. Slisher asked you some questions about police officers. That's what we were talking about before. And he asked you if the government were to call police officers to testify on behalf of the government, the prosecution, if you could evaluate their testimony the same way as you would any other witness. Do you remember those questions?
Yeah.
All right. And in that regard, you said you could do that, right? Let me ask you the same question. You understand that I represent Mr. Chauvin.
Yeah.
Right? Mr. Chauvin is my client, and we have an obligation to do what we feel is best to defend him. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Two parts to this. How would you feel, would you be able to evaluate police officers that the defense may call as witnesses as the same as the police officers or other witnesses that the state were to call?
No.
Why?
Because they're on the defense. They have to, like I was saying before, I feel like it's about, not losing the funding or losing everything that they had built up over the past couple of years. I just think that there's this narrative going on about defund the police, and it's all around the country, and police departments everywhere are, doing their best to, not.
So you would have an opinion about any witnesses that the defense might call, especially if they're police officers.
Yeah.
And that opinion would be biased against those witnesses. Yes?
Yes.
What if the defense calls someone other than a police officer, a citizen or a doctor or something? Would you share those same biases against those types of witnesses?
No.
So it's only if the defense were to call police officers that you would feel, as witnesses, that you would feel you couldn't set that bias aside.
Yeah, it's just I just feel like the police they cover for each other a lot, and some people are.
So let me just explain something to you. The defense has no obligation to call any witnesses. We don't have to ask a single question. We don't have to introduce a single piece of evidence. And it doesn't change the legal standard that the state has to prove that Mr. Chauvin's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. How do you feel about that?
I'm sorry, could you say that last sentence again?
Sure. I'm just going to repeat the question and maybe a little different. The defense has no obligation to call a witness. The defense has no obligation to enter evidence. The defense has no obligation to even ask a single question during this trial. And if we did not do that, if we did not call witnesses or present evidence, the state of Minnesota still has to prove Mr. Chauvin guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
And so if the defense called police officers to testify for them, you would be biased against those witnesses, right? But if the defense called other witnesses, doctors, civilians, you wouldn't share that same bias.
Yeah.
So how would you feel if the defense did nothing?
I wouldn't know how to feel. Part of me wants to say that if the defense had nothing to, give support to their side, it says something about the defendant and the case they're in. But also, it could just be that maybe the defendant's side of the story holds more merit than the other side, so they don't need to call witnesses and gather a whole bunch of evidence.
The court like to inquire further.
Here's 17. I just want to ask one question. We're talking about listening to the various witnesses. I also was wondering, the job of the jury is to sit through and listen to all the evidence, and we get some long days here. How do you think you can focus, keep the attention to all the evidence, yet not act on it until the end of the case?
I don't know. I mean, I think this trial is going to go on for a very long time. I don't know if I can give all my effort and focus.
Okay. Can you expand on that?
It's just coming here every day. I'm in a group of people I don't know, and then I gotta during a trial I gotta consider all the facts, all the evidence, and think for myself and just be listening. And like you were saying, there's long days in here, so I don't know if I'd be able to recall everything to say. in school, it's hard for me to focus 100% of the time. I don't know how cited I need to be during this trial.
Okay. All right, I'm going to talk to the lawyers a little bit, and then we'll get right back to you.
Okay.
You can just stay right in that seat. Juror 17, I'm gonna make a finding under Minnesota Rule of Criminal Procedure 2602, Subdivision 4, Paren 4, that conducting voir dire for the next couple of minutes might interfere with an overriding interest, specifically your legitimate privacy interest. And so I'm going to order that the audio feed to be cut. So basically, we're not. Juror 17, I'm going to excuse you from this panel. I think there might be better juries for you to sit on than going to a case of this magnitude. So you'll go with the deputy, and they'll release you, and we'll make a record shortly after. But thank you for your honest answers. I have a feeling you were being as honest and thoughtful as you could, and we do appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Yeah. All right. Mr. Nelson.
I don't believe that the TV audio may have been cut off during our those conversations.
Where were we on the audio?
We just received a text message from someone asking specifically what cognitive issues.
Were we cut? Okay. That may be the case, is that people in the courtroom could hear.
Yeah, except for the person who texted us who was not in the courtroom.
They're just watching.
Okay, sorry.
All right. All right. Okay. The court has excused juror number 17 for cause. He did indicate in response to Mr. Nelson's questions that he would treat police officer witnesses differently based on who called them, the state versus the defense, and he would apply a different standard to the defense. That's in addition to concerns that we shared off the record. The state probably isn't joining in as much, but he's 19 years old. He seemed overwhelmed. He seemed extremely anxious when he first came in, and I agree with the state. I think his demeanor improved, and he may have calmed down a little bit, but he admitted that the idea of sitting through a long day of testimony, he would have a hard time paying attention as he did. In fact, mentioned how he had problems at paying attention in school. And on the questionnaire, not to leave that to last, but he did say he did not want to be on the jury for all the reasons that are stated in his questionnaire, which we've already made an oral record of. So anything to add to that record, however? I think the state objected to the challenge for cause, but any other record to make?
I did object, Your Honor, and maintain the objection, but I appreciate the time and care with which you allowed the question to proceed.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Nelson?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll bring in juror number 19. Would you have a seat right in the chair, sir? Good afternoon, and thanks for your patience.
No problem.
You are juror number 19, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Before I turn the questioning over to the attorneys, I'm going to ask you a few questions, but first administer an oath so that all the questions you answer are under oath. So if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right. First thing I want to ask is about the questionnaire you filled out quite a while ago.
Sure.
Was everything that you answered on that questionnaire true?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any changes, amendments, addition to the questionnaire that you can think of at this moment?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. the attorneys might ask some specific questions that might prompt a memory that you want to change what you said or add to it, because sometimes on reflection, more information might become aware to you. Now, as far as the case itself, I believe you indicated you know something about the case, I assume through the media.
That's correct.
And the question I have for you is, after you filled out that questionnaire, or as part of that questionnaire, it advised you not to read any articles, follow the media on it. But sometimes, inadvertently, you might see a headline, or maybe a friend or something talks to you about the case, because you're not supposed to tell anybody you're a public juror. Did any of that happen between when you filled out the questionnaire and now?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so you weren't exposed to anything about the case, about the parties, anything like that?
No, sir.
All right. Now, because one of the reasons we say not to read any article is you have to put aside anything you've learned outside of the courtroom, any opinions because you can come in here with opinions. That's not a problem. I mean, most people probably have an opinion about the case or some of the facts. The question is, can you put those aside and decide the case before you, if you're a juror, based solely on the evidence and the law that I give you?
I believe I can, yes, sir.
All right. And you were given a long list of witnesses.
Yes.
Did you recognize anybody?
No, sir.
All right. And what about the length of the trial? We estimate it'll be about 4 weeks starting on March 29th. So that's when actual opening statements and evidence would be in. You'd probably be in trial here full time for probably about 4 weeks. Does that work?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to bring up before I turn it over to the attorneys?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All right. I'll turn to Mr. Nelson and ask him to inquire. Mr. Nelson.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Again, my name is Eric Nelson. I represent Mr. Chauvin in connection with this case. Just have a few questions I'd like to go over kind of generally with you, and then from there, ask you some specific questions about your questionnaire.
Sure.
And responses. You're good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So just you and I meet in some social situation. What are two or three things you'd want me to know about you walking away?
I'm an honest person, straightforward, and easy to talk to.
Okay. And when you received your jury summons, what was your first reaction?
Just trying to figure out dates that work best with work. I've done it 5 years ago, roughly. That time might not be exact, but I've done it recently, and it was more so just trying to make sure that I could find a week that worked well.
Okay. Did you postpone your jury service at some point and then end up here, or was this the original?
I did not. This was original.
Okay. When you received that jury notice, did it also include the questionnaire that you filled out?
I believe that was the second round of information I received. I believe first was just the dates, and then second was the questionnaire.
Okay. When you got that second mailing, the questionnaire, and you realized that it was in connection with this case, what was your reaction?
Just that it's my civil service to fill that out, and if chosen as a juror, to fulfill that.
Okay. When you got to court today or yesterday, whichever day was your first day, what did you think when you saw the government center?
Was a little surprising. I haven't been downtown recently. I used to work just across the street, so even pulling into the parking lot and that being gated up was just, like I said, I hadn't been down in this area of Minneapolis recently.
Okay. So when you say it was surprising, like what do you mean? Like just the scope of it, or?
Yeah, I'd say that's it. Just the gating and all the protective things in place.
Okay.
Was not, I guess, could have expected that, but wasn't expecting it.
Do you have any concerns about your personal safety serving as a juror on this case?
No, sir, I do not.
How about for your family?
No, sir.
Do you have any concerns about COVID-19 and how that may affect your service?
No, sir.
Okay. So let me just ask you a couple questions. In terms of your personal or professional life, can you think of a situation where you have had to resolve a conflict between two people?
Yeah, I did say that.
Can you give me an example of, I mean, without referencing who, or just give me an example of
Sure. I'm in client service, so that there's conflicts all the time back and forth on project deadlines, things that need to be met, and working through those together to find an amicable answer.
And how do you ultimately approach the resolution of conflict between two people?
It's in a conversation, meeting together, talking live, working through what both sides are looking for, and making sure we meet amicably.
Do you have to go through that process in a group setting in your professional life?
Yeah, I work on teams a lot of the time.
Okay. And what happens if you have two team members who disagree about the appropriate course of conduct? How do you resolve that type of conflict?
We work through it as a team, and once we decide as a team, that's the path we go forward with.
Okay. How do you, what tools or decision-making processes do you bring to the table to try to build consensus within a team?
I would like to think that we use more facts than emotions in those cases. Obviously, emotion is going to play into that, but if we're truly having inside the team an issue that we need to talk through, and making sure that we're breaking it down to what are the facts are, what do we need to work to, what's the answer that we need to get out of this conversation, and being productive with that.
Okay. You understand that this is a group decision-making process in a sense, if you were to be selected as a juror in this case?
I do.
Okay. And ultimately, in terms of your role as a juror in this case is to weigh the evidence, right?
Yes, sir.
Are you would you be able to listen to the evidence from both sides?
I believe so, yes.
Would you be able to keep an open mind until all of the evidence
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Would you be able to, if ultimately you felt that the state of Minnesota failed to meet its burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, would you have any reservation in finding Mr. Chauvin not guilty?
If that's the path that was laid out, no.
Okay. And conversely, the other way too, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You obviously are familiar with the case to some degree.
That is correct.
Right. And have you formed an opinion, a personal opinion about innocence or guilt in this case yet at this time?
I have not, because I have not examined it from the viewpoint of the law.
So in that regard, how would you examine it here if you were a juror?
I would have to take the charges that were brought against the defendant, and based on the facts that are presented, determine whether that's met.
And what would your response be if you just didn't have enough information?
I think then the burden of proof is on the prosecution in that case, and that the defendant's presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Right. And what would you do?
Then I would deem him innocent in this case.
And what happens if you were then in a deliberation room and somebody else felt differently?
I would talk through the facts and circumstances of why I believed that innocent would be the case, and I'd hear their case of why they think that might not be the case, and whether that be something that I had forgotten through the trial or jogs my memory, but make sure that we're both talking through with the facts presented.
And you'd be willing to re-examine your own views?
I would. I think I would have to.
Okay. And what if you felt it was just a critical piece of information and you weren't willing to change your mind after this discussion?
If I still felt that my viewpoint was the one that I believed in, I think I'd stand by that viewpoint.
Okay. Now, in terms of your questionnaire, you had the first question just sort of asked you to recite what you had heard or what you knew about this particular case.
Yes.
And one of your statements reads that after that time, George was unresponsive. The police officers did not try to resuscitate George while the ambulance arrived. Can you just explain, like, what do you mean? Where did you get that information?
before I was informed that I would possibly be a part of this case. That is what I remember from news reporting at the time.
Okay. So since that time, you've not
No,
read
sir.
it? Okay. Have you talked to other people about the fact that you're a potential juror in this case?
No, sir.
Now, you indicated that your view of the defendant in this case, Mr. Chauvin, was somewhat negative. And what you write is, from what I remember, they held a knee on his neck for 7 minutes and did not attempt to resuscitate him when he was not breathing. Can you expand on what you mean by somewhat negative and your thoughts in that regard?
Somewhat negative because the fact is someone died, and that's obviously not a positive thing by any means, and that he should be given the same justice that I'm here to help try and be a part of hearing in the case amongst his peers.
Okay. So who should be given that same justice?
Ideally, George should have at the time, and so the fact that he is not here to be held in front of a court for the crimes that he was being apprehended for is the somewhat negative that I was referring to in my questionnaire.
Okay. So is it fair to say that you have formed at least a preliminary opinion as to innocence or guilt?
I would not say that's the case. I'd say that somewhat negative is due to the fact that he's dead, and the innocence or guilt is in relation to the law and the charges brought, which I have not considered against that viewpoint.
Now, you indicated that in your questionnaire again that you've watched the video about the citizen bystander video 2 or 3 times, right?
That is correct.
In full from start to finish?
I would not say in full. I believe it was as a part of news articles, so I don't believe I would have ever seen fully start to finish, but clips of it, yes.
And it's fair to say that you've not seen any other evidence in this case?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So prior to receiving this juror questionnaire, you weren't following this in the media to any significant extent?
Not actively, no.
I'm sorry?
Not actively, no.
Okay. But you did have some conversations with family, friends, coworkers, things of that nature, right?
Yeah, I think that just the shock that it had on the city, where there were natural conversations that came up both with my family and the workplace, and yes, I partook in those.
Okay. And did you have friends or family member who may have taken different viewpoints of the circumstances?
I not necessarily know. I don't think the conversations were revolving around any judgment upon the case, but just the happenings of what was out there.
Well, I guess what I mean by that is that there's lots of ripple effects, right, from any incident, and so some people will take a position one way, and another person will take a contrary position. Any of the conversations that you had with your family, friends, or coworkers, did they differ?
Not materially, no.
Okay. Would you describe those conversations as more political in nature or specific to the facts of this case?
More political in nature, and just the community in general.
Do you think that any of the opinions that you or your friends share in terms of the politics, lowercase p, of this situation would influence your ability to be fair and impartial in this case?
No, I don't believe so.
So no one's expecting you to not have any biases or any concerns, or the question is, can you set those aside?
Understood.
And you think you can do that?
Yes, sir.
Now, you also indicated that you have a friend who is a police officer?
That is correct.
Is he a police officer with the Minneapolis Police Department?
I believe so.
Okay. Have you talked about this situation prior to the jury questionnaire with your friend?
I did not, no.
Okay. You indicate you haven't seen him very often since COVID?
No, not often, no.
How close of a friend would you describe this to be?
He's not a super close friend. I'd say more of a friend of a friend.
Okay. How often prior to COVID, how often would you see him?
2 times a year, maybe.
Okay. Would he talk about his job?
Occasionally.
Okay. Would he kind of tell you the stories of arrests he's made and stuff like that?
Not so much. More so, he has a canine as a part of his duty, and just talks about his dog mostly.
Okay. If you were selected as a juror on this case, would you call up your friend and ask him his opinion? And
No, as I don't believe I should be talking with anyone outside these walls about the case.
would you be concerned that if you were to find Mr. Chauvin guilty, that could damage your friendship with this person?
No, I would not.
And conversely, would you feel any obligation to find him not guilty by virtue of this relationship?
No.
You had some karate lessons when you were 7 or 8 years old?
I did.
Like pretty much every other kid in the state?
Just wanted to answer to the best of my ability.
Right, understood. You also had some opinions as to both Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Would you care to expand on either of those opinions?
I think what I wrote there is consistent with my thoughts.
Okay. You support Black Lives Matter in a general context, right?
That is correct.
But you disagree with some of their tenets, is what you wrote?
That is correct.
Can you explain that?
I think some of the ways that, depending on group members, have gone about it has not always been the best actions, but I do believe that Black Lives Matter.
And you also have a somewhat unfavorable opinion of Blue Lives Matter.
That is correct.
Do you ever have that conversation with your police officer friend?
I have not, no.
Okay. You also indicated that you have some friends who are lawyers.
That's correct.
All right. Same question. I'm expecting the same response, that you're not going to call them and ask them, hey, Cahill said the law is this. Mr. Judge Cahill has said the law is this. Is he right?
No, sir.
Okay. You previously also had served on a jury, right?
That is correct.
Was that here in Hennepin County?
It was.
And you said that was maybe 5-6 years ago or something?
Roughly. Like I said, don't know the exact year, but yeah, roughly that time frame.
And you ultimately did not take a part in those deliberation processes?
That is correct. I was an alternate.
Did you have a good experience?
I think as good as an experience as you can have.
Okay. Was it a longer trial?
It was about a week, if my memory serves correctly.
Were you disappointed that you didn't get to take part in the deliberation process?
Slightly, yeah. I think after hearing the process, I formed an opinion and sat through it, so I was looking forward to it, as I think it's an important part of our society.
Okay. And in terms of that experience, I mean, you had kind of a preview, right, leading up to this. You know, there's some delays here and there, right? Yeah. But ultimately, there's nothing about that experience that would impact or impair your ability to be fair in this case?
No, sir.
Just want to follow up on one last question in your questionnaire. You indicated that it is a busy time for work, but that you could fulfill your civic duty in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So would you be going to work after jury duty and staying late, or how would you handle that?
Yeah, so I would be on late, but there's probably some things I'd still have to pitch in and work through at night.
Okay. Is it like would you end up having to pull all-nighters and anyway have it affect your ability to serve here as a juror?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Your Honor, I'll pass for cause.
Mr. Solution. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Juror number 19.
Yes, sir.
You discussed in your questionnaire some information that you gathered or had prior to filling out the questionnaire about the case itself. And I just want to follow up on a couple of things. I think the first thing that I'd like you to explain a little bit further is that you said in news stories that you heard that George Floyd may have been under the influence of hard drugs, I think is what you described. And can you please tell me what you believe you've heard about that?
Trying to recollect back, just that there may have been drugs in his blood, but I cannot confirm or deny whether that is a truthful story at this time.
Aside from whether or not the story is truthful, I was interested that you use the term hard drugs. What do you define as hard drugs?
Anything that I wouldn't consider a recreational drug, so anything more than marijuana.
Okay. And so what effect, what ran through your mind when you heard this? Regardless of whether or not it's true, that George Floyd may have been under the influence of hard drugs.
Frankly, I don't think that should have much impact on the case, as whether you're under the influence of drugs doesn't determine whether you should be living or dead.
And I believe you also stated that you think that you heard that George Floyd had what you called a checkered past.
Yes.
Can you describe what you meant by that?
If I remember correctly, he has served previously prison sentences, or at least been convicted of crimes in the past.
And that's what you heard in the media?
That's what I heard in the media.
I think you also said that you believe that you heard that it involved a domestic disturbance?
I believe that's one of the cases that I had heard about, yes.
Can you describe for us what you think you heard about that, just as much detail as you can recall?
There's not a lot there, but just that one of his previous charges, at least, I don't know if it was conviction or not, had to do with either domestic assault or domestic disturbance.
So, one thing that you were asked in terms of prior information that you've heard, maybe prior opinions that you formed before coming here today, you were asked whether or not you could set those opinions aside and decide the case based solely on the evidence that you hear. Now, you may or may not hear any evidence like that at all. But just in the back of your mind, as you would be listening and thinking about this case, let's say you didn't hear any evidence regarding anything about George Floyd's past. Do you think you'd be able to put that out of your mind, or would it still, kind of be in the back of your mind that maybe George Floyd had some run-ins with the law?
I think I'd be able to set that aside because each case should be tried on its own.
And if you did hear information like that, that he'd had some run-ins with the law prior to the day that he died, do you think that that would have an effect on how you would decide the actions of those involved on that particular day?
I don't believe so. As I just said, I think that the trial should stand for itself as alone. What has happened in the past shouldn't be on trial here.
Can you, without disclosing, your precise title or the place you work, just provide a little bit more information about what exactly you do in your job?
Yeah, so I'm an auditor. So with that, I look at companies' financial statements to make sure that they're in accordance with the accounting standards.
Okay. And as an auditor, I think you said this is a busy time. Is this a particularly busy time for you as an auditor?
It's a little better right now. January is probably the worst, but here through June is busier than the second half of the year, yes.
And if you were seated as a juror in this case, on behalf of both sides, we'd be asking you to commit your full and undivided attention to this trial, to all of the witnesses who testify, to all of the exhibits that are offered, to all of the instructions of the judge. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, sir.
And you gave a good affirmative answer there. I just wanted to revisit an answer you gave before a couple of times when asked the question about would you be able to put aside any opinions you may have formed or media accounts you have heard. And I think you said, I believe I can, or I think I can. And just need to be very clear here, because if you were a pilot instead of an accountant and I was about to get on your plane and I'd say, hey, are you gonna land this plane safely in Phoenix like we have planned? And you said, I believe so. I might turn around. And so I just need to hear from you when you say that you believe that you can set aside your prior opinions. Do you mean you can, or are you unsure?
I believe I can to the best of my ability.
Okay. And so when you say you believe you can, does that mean that you will or that you'll just try?
That I will.
That you will?
Yes, sir.
Getting back to the issue of your college friend or the friend of a friend who serves as a police officer, I was going to ask you, I mean, if you had to evaluate the testimony of a police officer versus any other witness, do you believe that you would, take the word or the testimony of a police officer over that of a different witness, say a bystander?
Unless the question was directly related to subject matter that a police officer would have more knowledge on than a normal citizen, no.
Mm-hmm. So to draw that out a little bit, if you had two people seeing the same event, one, witness A was a police officer, witness B was a bystander, and they were just simply reporting what they saw, would you have a reason to believe one person over the other if what they said was something different?
No.
Okay. But if the officer was testifying about something, using your friend with the canine, for example, you'd probably tend to believe what that person would have to say about how his canine works over just some casual person who would.
Yes, I would assume a police officer would know more about the canine unit than someone that does not work within that portion of the police department.
So it sounds to me that it would be fair to say your opinion wouldn't just be exclusive to police officers, but you would tend to believe, say, a physician about medical things over a bystander, someone who is untrained.
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. I think I understand. One moment, Your Honor. Thank you. I have no further questions, and I really appreciate your candor here today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Juror 19, you will serve on this jury.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to have you come back. You're free to go about your business until March 29th. And we'll have you back here at 9 a.m. And the deputies will escort you to the courtroom where you will wait until we start the trial itself. We're anticipating about 4 weeks. In the meantime, you're not an investigator. Don't talk to people about the case. Don't try and check up on the case.
Will I be getting any further information in case the 29th is not the date, or will there be any confirmation before that point?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm making that commitment now. It's 3 weeks away. I don't want you to forget. We will definitely contact you if that changes, as you've already seen. Sometimes there are unforeseen delays. We're pretty confident in that date, so I think we're going to go with that. So if you don't hear from us, March 29th, 9 a.m., please be here. But I'm going to ask the jury office to give reminder calls to everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have one juror left, but we have been going since 8 a.m. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to wait until tomorrow? We can talk a little bit about what motions we're going to hear at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Let the last juror go. All right, I think we're going to recess for the day because it is 4:26. And last juror number 20, Greg, Mr. Schaefer. Would you make sure you tell them when you let them go, they'll be the first on our list at 9 o'clock?
Before we recess, I'd like to make a record of our bench conference regarding
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. As the court recalls, juror reports, as that term is used, as a subject of a motion in limine this morning. Following that motion, we had a brief discussion in chambers about the definition of a report of a juror and distinguishing between criminal history reports and work product. And I believe that our conversation was that the defense was requesting criminal history reports. As a result of that conversation, we disclosed the criminal history reports run for jurors 1 through 6 prior to the beginning of voir dire this morning. And then over the noon hour, it is my understanding that the balance of those reports were provided to counsel. And so I believe that we've satisfied our obligations there and that the defense is agreeable to that.
Mr. Nelson, anything to add?
Mayor, that's accurate. And I acknowledge receipt of the criminal history reports.
All right, thank you. With regard to motions, what are we going to be handling tomorrow morning? Do we have numbers that you can give me so I can... I've looked at all of them before, but I would like to brush up just in case.
If we may go have a discussion.
All right, we'll go off the record.
So last night, Mr. Frank.
We're on the record. Go ahead. I just said we're on the record.
Last night, Mr. Frank and I had conversations about the motions that we intended to argue for today. I don't think that the email confirming those got sent until this morning. So I would just propose that Mr. Frank and I be given another opportunity to confer. I don't think he's in the courtroom right now. And I'll get that email to you earlier so we can brush up. But by my record, I believe that State's amended motion 2 is the only state motion remaining. The original 2 as amended by the March 4th filing. I believe that number 30 remains, number 31 remains, number 32 remains, number 33 remains. 34 has been partially dealt with. 36 remains. Let me just double check. Number 22 does still remain. I apologize if I... Number 23 remains.
All right, so we've got a substantial amount. Why don't we do this? Send an email to all parties in, my personal email, my court email, tonight, and just so we all know kind of ahead of time.
Yeah,
if that's possible.
I'll give Mr. Frank a call as soon as we're...
Yeah, what's left and what specifically tomorrow morning we're going to do. That'd be appreciated. All right, and Mr. Schaefer, do the parties have a list of who's coming in tomorrow?
So I can give them, do you want me to send an email or tell them?
Let's send an email. That'll work. Okay. All right. Anything else for the record before we recess for the day?
Not for the state. Thank you.
All right. We're in recess until 8 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you.
Who have reached out to me and my family to offer their prayers and support. let you know that George has touched so many lives. I'm here today to represent my brother. You guys call him George, but I called him Floyd. I'm here to be his voice today. While I want to limit my comments on the trial itself, I will say that my family and I are glad the wait is finally over and the day is here. We are praying for justice. Our hope is that justice prevails and we can all use this as an opportunity to be better and do better for those around us. I sat in the courtroom today and looked at the officer who took my brother's life. I just really wanted that officer to know how much love Floyd had. Not only by me and his family, but you guys too, and the people around the country. We as people need to be more kinder to one another. Violence is not the answer to everything. Sometimes we need to take a step back, think before we react, and that's me, you, officers. It doesn't matter. That's not the answer that always needs to be. I miss my brother. I miss my brother. George, as you guys called him, will give the shirt off his back to a stranger. That's how we roll. That was him. He didn't have to know you, to love on you, to give you advice, to be a shoulder to lean on. He had his own troubles, but he also made sure that no one seen the trouble he was going through. If you was going through, you could never, ever know what he was going through because he didn't let you see that side of him. That officer took a great man, a great father, a great brother, a great uncle, and a great father. He really took a great father. He was so family oriented. He loved his family. He loved his daughter. Gianna meant the world to him. And we would never get that back. I want you guys to continue to pray for our family because we need it. We need it. And God bless you guys.
We love you.
Last night was probably one of the most difficult nights I've had in a while since this has happened. You know, growing up in the same house with Floyd, we had a real special connection. And a lot of that connection came from sports. Growing up, I played sports. He did. He was a standout athlete, and we had a real strong connection through sports. And even with him being in Minneapolis and me being in Houston, during the sports season, particularly the NBA and NFL, you know, we would talk at night after the games. And, you know, we would just kind of just catch up and talk a lot of sports talk. And as I mentioned before, he was a real big LeBron fan. You know, and if you're watching the NBA right now, the Lakers are playing our hometown Houston Rockets. And, you know, they're getting the better of us. So, you know, he would probably, you know, crack some jokes and let me hear some trash talk about it. And, you know, after the game last night, being here in Minnesota, you know, the first thing I did after the game was think about, you know, talking to George. And you know, that's when it kind of hit me like, you know, there's times like this when I really miss him the most. Just a simple phone call or a laugh, you know, it brightens up the day. He would brighten up any day. You know, and I woke up this morning feeling a lot better. You know, and then I get here to this hearing and to hear them assassinate his character, it kind of put me back in the mindset of where I was last night. You know, to hear those accusations and the foolishness, and it was crazy. I couldn't bear it. You know, my uncle was nothing like the guy they're trying to make him to be. Y'all take his life in broad daylight on camera, and then my family has to sit in the courtroom and hear that foolishness on top of all of that. You know, it's hurting and disrespectful. You know, so I think more than anything, we appreciate everybody coming together and standing with us. You know, and all of the support, you know, to see the Black Lives Matter movements and people of all colors just coming together standing for what's right, because what happened to my uncle was not right. Amen. That was a murder. We want justice. We want change.
I don't believe this, and I just, oh man. I just, the one thing I want is accountability. Growing up, that's what I was taught. Be accountable for your actions. If you do the crime, you do the time. So why is it different for these guys? It shouldn't be different. And it will not be different, because we will get justice for my brother. I don't believe this, and I just, oh man.
The world witnessed the live execution of George. Everybody watched him scream for his mom. He pleaded for help, and nobody cared. They kept their knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I ask that everybody stand with us in solidarity as we tirelessly go through everything that we have to go through with the court. Because they're going to prolong this as long as they can, because they have no ability at all to say that that video was right. That was wrong. They killed him. This is worldwide. The nation is standing behind us. We need justice, and we demand that.
They saying he died from a drug overdose. They saying that he was non-compliant. Floyd, oh, that's my brother, you guys. Let me tell you, he's an uncle. He's a father. He's a friend. Pillar of his community in Houston, Texas. Everybody loved George where he's from, and Minnesota, the people of Minnesota loved him too. The people that got to know him. And one thing about George, he will want us to get his justice for him. And them officers saying that drug overdose killed him, that did not kill him. That officer, the only one that was getting high, my brother begging for his life. That's the only one I saw getting high. As my brother begged for his life for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, begging this man, take your foot off my neck, give me some water. Let me breathe. And they say when someone's dying, you know, they have visions, something close that they love so dearly. And he called out for mama. And you know, one thing, when we all get in trouble, male or female, we gonna call our mama, because mama gonna make us feel so much better. Take the situation away. So my brother screamed and called out for mom. That hurt me so dearly, that traumatic hunting video. Have to watch that video, hearing them see that, and my daughter called me. My daughter's 9 years old, called me on the phone, FaceTime me. I tried to hide this from her, but it found her. She called me crying and said, "Dad, I'm so sorry for your brother's loss." Hurts deeply. And you know, I didn't even know what to say to her. I just did what her dad would do, what my mom would have did for me. That's what my brother called out for. Just comfort her, try to make her feel better, change the subject. But she just cried. I'm just looking at her laughing like, oh, look at my baby, she's so beautiful. So strong in this situation. She's trying to comfort me in our situation. So again, Floyd, I know she's gonna miss Floyd dearly. He was a great man, brother, uncle, father, friend, pillar of his community. That's the George Floyd I know. And I wish you guys would have got to know him as that person as well, not the person they're trying to paint him to be. Do not let them paint their picture and their narrative on Floyd, because Floyd narrated his death, if y'all listen to that video. So thank you guys for coming out, for the support. Love y'all, Minneapolis. Thank y'all.